We're kicking it off. We're live.
We're live.
Oh,
So
we're live?
welcome.
Yeah.
What is the name of this beautiful summit you're having?
Yeah, so this is called Happy Summit, which is essentially our annual customer summit where we invite customers, people who are interested in what we're doing around centralized maintenance. And this year we actually have something pretty special. So we actually have invited our plugin partners. So these are people companies that have integrated with the Happy Coast software products.
Okay.
And so we've invited them as well, and they're here, they're sponsoring and really just showing up and being a part of the 200 plus people that are here.
I think something that stands out to me about this summit and what you and the team are doing is you've been in the industry, I think, over 12 years?
Yeah,
13
years.
13 years. Is that you invited people you might consider competitors or other people in the space because you want to build a better ecosystem. Is that what it sounds like you're doing? And can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that comes from our customer base, right? As we go around talking to our customers and learning from lessons of the past, shall we say? Yeah. We've seen a lot of other providers in the space where our customers are saying, hey, we want to work with best in class, right? But a lot of these best in class softwares, they don't talk to each other. And so as we dug deeper and we said, well, what do you actually want? We said, well, we don't just want the products to work with each other. We want to just use one product because otherwise even if you're working together, you're still logging into 20, 30, 40 different pieces of software. Okay. So the vision that we have was essentially mimicking what our customers are, which is like being able to work in one interface, but having all the different best in class software be in one platform. So that's what was created.
How do you accomplish that?
It's really hard. If you're thinking about, let's say HappyCo, we deliver maintenance software, right? So you're doing work orders and you create work orders in our system. You give it to the internal teams, the internal maintenance guys using it. Then the question is like, well, how do I work with third-party vendors? So then for us, we go, well, why don't we partner with a Thumbtack, for example? They have third-party vendors or a Renault who has vendor compliance software. Their interface, we allow a little window for them to input their software within our software. But the look and feel is still one consistent look and feel. Because I believe we have the best user interface in the industry. It's like simple to use, very dumbed down so that any user can use it, even myself. So we have the nice, simple user interface and we allow other people to kind of put their interface within ours, essentially.
Yeah. One question that comes to mind, and something that I've noticed over the years is that some blind spot that most tech companies have is that they don't welcome the end user to the table. What do I mean by that? When you look at who builds the tech, they don't have a consultant or an employee full-time that is or has been an end user to provide ongoing feedback. Is this something that you guys do, or is it something that you find necessary in building the best product, the best in class?
That's a really good question. We think about multiple end users, right? So you have the end user. In our case, we have the technician, the boots on the ground, fixing plumbing. Yet at the same time, they have to check an interface to figure out what to fix that has work orders. You have the supervisor who's looking at a very, very different interface, right? They're trying to manage a team. Then you have the property manager who's looking at a slightly different view. We have the regional manager who's looking across all their management, different properties. Then you have your executive team looking across all their properties and portfolio. You have your investors that are looking across their portfolio specifically that maybe multiple managers are managing. And you have to consider every single stakeholder. In what we've done is we've created a customer advisory board. And we've invited people from all different levels to be part of it and give feedback. And our teams, they're going in the field, watching people use it, interviewing the technician in the workshop that's, it could be in the back shed somewhere, but I think it's important to know who your end users are, the challenges that they face. Something as simple as Wi-Fi connectivity in the shed. Like they don't have it. So what do you do? So really important to kind of consider all those points you pointed out.
How do you solve those challenges? For example, the lack of Wi-Fi.
So we have the ability we worked on this thing, a very specific feature called offline sync. And we make sure that the apps can be used offline. So if you don't have any Wi-Fi connectivity, you can use it offline. When you go and hit a Wi-Fi spot, then it uploads, downloads everything.
And it syncs.
It syncs up, yeah. But that was really hard to build because everything is on an online world, right? But then people didn't think about that one use case. So little things like that, but it's all in the details that how you make a good product. That's what we believe.
So you've been in the industry now for a number of years.
Mhm.
And were you a CEO before you built this company?
Was I a CEO before I built this company?
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a CEO.
Oh, okay.
But I think
You've been the CEO.
I've started a bunch of different companies in the past. Started a lot of small businesses that some have gone nowhere. I had a jewelry business.
Okay.
Handbags and jewelry, not my thing. I'm too honest. So, when a girl was buying the handbag, she said, "What do you think of it?" I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. It's not that great."
That's great.
So I learned
Honest.
quickly, like, you gotta find what you're passionate about. And to me, it's like solving problems through software technology. And I think this is probably my fourth technology company, but this is probably the biggest one I've run myself. Yeah.
We met in San Francisco, and you think back to that building where Tony Hsieh built his first Zappos out of that same building, and many other great people. What are some things, maybe some takeaways for you in terms of leadership and culture and hiring on the right team?
Man, there's so many lessons. I think every stage of the company requires very different skills, experiences, a different, essentially, like, you have to recreate yourself at every stage. You can read books as much as you can, but you don't know how it works until you're actually doing it. So one thing that really very grateful for is just being able to think and learn as quickly as possible. It's like a step ladder. So every juncture, you kind of have this massive gap to step up to. And that's really challenging because you feel like a failure for a long period of time until you start to go, "Oh, actually, I kind of get this." And then you're there, everything is easy. Then you hit that next step, you're like, "Oh gosh, I'm beginning to feel that again." I think for us, one of the key things we have is our core values and culture, which we distilled about 3 or 4 years into the business, we distilled it, which is like, what is our core values? What do we stand for? How do we want people to show up? And I think we did a really great job there. Another thing that I learned along the way was you have to codify what it means, what the core values are. But the harder part is hiring and then unfortunately firing, right? Because you have to figure out how to hire and find people with the same core values. But then the challenge is not everyone shows up at work, how they interview. The other tool you have is around, like, you have to have a tough conversation, very frank. You give people 1 or 2 chances to, like, "Hey, I don't think you're doing it how we do things around here." But then if you can't change the behavior, then you have to let people go. That's probably the hardest part of the job. But it's the one that I learned is it's the hardest, but it's the most necessary thing, because more often than not, someone who is not, if in my view, not performing, they are not happy in their role as well. They know it. They know, like, "Hey, I'm not happy at this company," right? And it's probably better for them to move on to somewhere that they have a much better fit with. And it's like a sports team.
Yep.
You're great in one team,
analogy.
you may not be a good one in another one. I don't play football, but in soccer, right? If you're a great right back and your team plays long ball, but you like passing, you should go find a team that plays a short passing game. So.
You mentioned company culture and how important that is. There is a crisis on a operator side. The fact that companies at the top versus teams in the field are disconnected.
Yeah.
People in the field feel disconnected from the message, from the corporate office. Is your company, is your product finding ways to kind of like bridge that gap in any way?
So I don't think our company is directly attacking solving the sort of gap between corporate and on-site. However, I think one of the reasons why there's a divide is the lack of clarity. And so I think from that perspective, yes, I think we're helping, because, like, people at corporate level, they don't really know what's happening on the ground, right? They think, why are people taking so long to fix the filter? Whereas the technician went in and it's not the filter, the whole pipe is burst or whatever it is, And so I think through our software being able to provide more transparency, so if you dug into things, you go, "Oh, okay, now I know why that's happening," that is definitely helping. But I think a lot of that is just the lack of transparency. It's such a gap between the different levels. But if we can add more transparency, clarity, that definitely helps culture and how people feel, right? Cool.
Staff shortages are a huge challenge within the industry, especially on the maintenance side. Extremely hard to find qualified personnel, extremely hard to even find like a body, just a body to show up to work. Could you think of a few ways in which your software, your tech solution helps?
Yeah. So labor shortage has been like plaguing the industry for, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 years. It has gotten worse and worse, right? So, and it's not just unique to multifamily. It's anything with a trades. It's getting really challenging. But then if you take, someone in a specialist field in HVAC, versus multifamily, that guy's getting paid even more than a multifamily person, and yet the multifamily person is now required to be on call. There's like way more work for them. So what we did was we started to look at like how could we help the maintenance technician. So the maintenance technician to me is our core end user. Everyone else is there to help the show, but our star of the show is the maintenance person. So one of the things that we created was a call center, essentially like it's called Happy Force. And Happy Force is a virtual maintenance solution. So we have experienced technicians, 10, 15, 20 years experience. They work for Happy Co under the Happy Force banner. And when any ticket comes in, they're doing frontline triage. So they're the ones that are, after hours, 24/7 emergency. They're picking up the phone. They're saying, "Hey, Adrian, what's going on?" You're like, well, I need someone to come in. Like, it's an emergency. What's an emergency? Oh, my blinds fell down. Oh, is it in your bedroom? No. It's in your living room? Yeah. Can you sleep in your bedroom? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, tomorrow when the technician comes in, we will fix it. And that saves a trip out for a poor guy who's, going to get woken up at 3 a.m. Right. And you think there's so many instances of 24/7 maintenance where I think it's like our stat is 3 out of 5 after our emergency calls are BS. They're not real emergencies. And so that's one way to help, give that person better quality of living. Adding a lot of automation into scheduling, for example. How do you schedule work? How do you give it to the right technician? We spent a lot of time working on that as well. There's all these other pieces. I think it's like chipping away. There's no silver bullet. It's like all these thousands of lead bullets. Like everything takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? That's how we really help the labor shortage. What happens is the technician becomes more efficient. And my hope is that because they're more efficient, you can start to pay them better. And then you won't have to have turnover, right? So I think that's how we think about it in the long run.
If you think about, all the different people pulling at you, at this summit, you've got 200 innovators, real estate investors from REITs and family offices and groups who manage properties. How do you think about, and what are you most excited about for this year? How do you prioritize? Are you prioritizing AI? Are you prioritizing, like, if you think about the stack, if you're thinking about building new products, what's maybe the thing you're most excited about for this year?
Oh, so many things.
I know there's some things you're going to be talking about over the next couple of days, and there's a lot of speakers. So maybe something you could share with us, and we won't share this till after the conference.
The thing that I'm most excited about from coming out of Summit is that we've continued to really think about the little things and automate all the things that are repetitive and people hate doing. Right. And AI is a component of what we do, but we don't really we don't push AI like that's what we do, because I think people are so turned off by AI. But what people are excited about is saying, hey, you're doing this 1,000 times, every month. What if we could make that, you could do that 0 times a month? People want that. And then how you get it done, no one really cares. So I think that's probably for us, like the most exciting thing is like improving the core product offering, adding a lot of automation, and then bringing in these like plug-in partners, these third-party integration partners. We have a bunch of really exciting integrations with these teams that basically make people's jobs 30, 40% more efficient. Yeah, to me, that's the more exciting piece about what we're doing. Yeah.
How do you see the future of PropTech related to maintenance, facilities maintenance, multifamily?
The future of PropTech specific to multifamily maintenance is I think is really bright, because you guys are probably seeing there's tons of opportunity, like new startups coming on board, trying to solve different pieces of maintenance. And I think that can only basically elevate, because us alone as a company, we only have a certain voice, but if a lot of people are talking about it, it's only going to improve the industry. So I think that's a really exciting piece. In terms of how it will change, I think it's already changing. People are trying to build better tools for the technician, right? For us, one of our core things is data insights. And what we've been able to do is to take data that's coming out of the operations maintenance side and then help to provide actionable like data points to do something. So for example, if someone is, looking at their plumbing, for example, in this building and like unit 201 has a plumbing issue, our BI tool, Joy BI, actually is looking at and summarizing all the plumbing issues related to this property and saying, actually, you know what? It's actually this building has a plumbing issue, not this unit. And that to me is really like that's an insight that could save hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So I think that's a pretty exciting piece for us is that Joy BI.